Hello, and welcome to Builders, the podcast where we discuss the ups and downs of building great tech products through the eyes of the people who build them. I'm Lee Haynes, co-founder of Proxify, and this time we have the pleasure of diving into the world of tech innovation and entrepreneurial spirit with our guest, Jonatan Dykert. As a co-founder of Ripe, Jonatan has been at the forefront of transforming how SaaS revenue teams interact with their most valuable asset, their product. Since August 2021, Jonatan and his team in Stockholm have been redefining the art of qualifying, routing, and converting leads, proving that the right approach can indeed turn your product into your best salesperson. Before embarking on his journey with Ripe, Jonatan worked in various roles within different product teams. Today, we're excited to dive into his journey, exploring the ups and downs, the insights gained, and his visions for the future. Join us as we uncover the story of a tech leader who's not just shaping products, but also crafting the future of how businesses engage with technology. Jonatan, a warm welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Nice to have you here. Now, you've worked in various tech and product positions throughout the years before finally or currently co-founding Ripe. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it was a bit of a. I studied business and economics initially, and I just really wanted to go to San Francisco. So that was really the main motivation. I had a girlfriend at the time who got into Berkeley and started looking for internships, and just friend of a friend of a friend got me an interview, and finally I got an internship there, and just turned out that ended up in product management. So it's really like just slid in on a prawn sandwich, which is a Swedish expression that I taught everyone at the office there. But
nice.
But it was a real accident, really. I've always been really geared towards technology. I like it. I think it's a lot of fun. But actually, like working hands on it beyond like building website was a bit of an accident.
Mm-hmm. And since August 2021, we said is when you kind of co-founded Ripe, and we're going to be talking a lot about Ripe today. Where were you? What positions were you holding before co-founding Ripe?
Yeah, so I started at Meltwater when I came there as an intern, and just like dove in head first into it. And I think the main thing that was pretty strange about that company when I got there was that we had 600 or 700 salespeople and only like maybe 20-30 people working all together in product and engineering, including design, including engineers, all of that. So it was a really sales heavy company, and a lot of my managers and the people that have sort of come through up the ranks were also people that started in sales. So it was a very unique experience in that sense. And I came into this cool office in San Francisco, and it was like amazing real estate downtown, all that stuff. And then I opened up the product. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, they're selling this. It looks 10 years old, right? But it was a very a lot of the value that people got out of that product initially was based on emails that they got every morning. So like, but just like that, 5 minutes in, you were hit with sort of a realization that everything's not as it seems, and you're trying to like uncover how this, how you can sell that to $5,000 to somebody or $100,000 to somebody.
It's hard to justify modern surroundings.
Yeah, exactly.
An outdated product.
Yeah, so I got hired after my internship ended. Went back to Sweden, worked there for remotely for a year. So I got a jump start on that terrible experience. I was gonna say, but did that for a year, came back, moved there, and ended up staying for a few years at Meltwater before heading back to Stockholm. And then I joined a small startup. I was there for I think 3 months, maybe a little bit less. Then COVID hit, was fired. Moved on to Kry, which was a great place to be at the time. It was really fun. Like, we were trying to get vaccines out to people, get people to understand how to respond to COVID. So I actually took over that from a friend and one of your colleagues, Anton. His project initially, which was how can we connect doctors and patients remotely, which was a free service, which we just gave to every doctor in Europe, and got a ton of usage on that. So that was a fun journey, and got to learn a lot of great people there. And then, but at some point I was like, okay, I gotta get out. I gotta actually do something. And then I have a co-founder, Elin, who really sort of propelled me into it. So we were like, there's something about video. I've worked in a like very sales heavy environment. Like, there's something here. We weren't really sure what it was, but we built a quick MVP, started showing it to people, and then we were sort of off to the races. I saw Johannes there who's the CEO of Kry, and he was like, what do you mean? He's like, I hear you're quitting. What's up? What can we do? And I got to start this thing now. He's like, oh, that's a great excuse. Anyways, happy to invest. Nice. So that was a real confidence boost that early on in the process. And incredibly generous person who has helped a lot throughout this journey as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you started, hinting at what it is Ripe does. Can you tell us a little bit more about Ripe? What is it? What does it do? What are your current
super complex? I try to explain this to friends sometimes, but it's like, again, this sort of nested layers. But at its very essence, it's very, very super simple. Actually, it's we used to sell products over the phone. That's how I grew up at Meltwater. You had the sales office pumping music, ringing bells and stuff. That switched over to. We sold over video calls, but you had to book a demo through the website. And today, people are really, starting with the product. That's their first interaction point with you as a business. They start adopting the product, and sales largely are working in the sort of old paradigm still. So even if you look at a company like Slack, right, where clearly a product-led sort of like get it in, it's viral. You invite all your friends from work, and then you start collaborating together. Like they have a huge sales team, but how do they work? Like not necessarily in the product. So that was sort of that's been the fundamental piece that we're trying to give to our customers now. Of course, it's super appreciated because they're sort of flying blind at the moment. They don't know where. You jump on a call with a seller and they're like, oh, did you log into the product? And you're like, you should probably know that, right? So it's a lot like product analytics that people like me have had for a long time in understanding where a particular person is, or even if we're mostly looking at aggregates, but giving that to salespeople and then being able to connect people one-to-one with the right people, because at the end, like a lot of the strategies that people are cultivating, and I think this is an evolving field, but it's you get 1,000 signups. Who are you going to call first? So you need to figure out who are the people that are really intent on buying here. So we provide those
VIPs,
signals,
right? Yeah,
exactly, right. Like we provide those signals, give people, hey, you should have a look at this guy. You can say exactly what is done in the product, and then with Ripe, you can actually then engage in the app. So you can record a video message, send that over. Next time he signs in, they're going to see that kind of stuff. So we're really thinking about sort of what is the sales team and the sales playbook for this sort of advanced and very expensive products going to look like in this decade. And that's what we're building.
Super interesting. And so it's basically you have this kind of product-led motion that then feeds into a sales-led motion, right? Where I think it's been a lot of people have kind of been thinking of it kind of like either or over the last few years at least. But if
Absolutely.
In 2024, if you had to pick one of them, product-led or kind of sales-led, which one would it be?
Yeah, no, I think it all depends on what you're selling, right? So I think like if you're building a small plugin for a CRM or whatever, like you got to go product led, right? You have to. You have 20, 40 million something customers in the world. Go for it. And then you, on the other hand, you're building this very sort of like what we're building, this more advanced enterprise product that is built for a much more niche market. Takes a lot of hand holding. Is this how do we actually like get people onto this too? That stuff you're better off going sales-led with. But I think ultimately, like obviously a combination is the strongest, and that's really our major bet as a company, right? That these things will converge over time, and as you know, it's going to increase barriers for everyone else buying products as well, because it's. But I think product-led is the foundation where you get volume, where you get validation, and we started out product-led as well. But as the sales process are getting more and more complex, it's a question of resources, and then it's not necessarily one option that's the best.
No, that makes complete sense. But there's presumably a lot of kind of personalization that goes into your product here, and presumably as well a lot of kind of AI that kind of supports that personalization, even I'm assuming in your product. I think personalization, we could say it's starting or has already become a little bit of a commodity with AI in particular, right? So we might assume that users might become numb or kind of they've seen it before.
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you mean.
Right?
I mean,
so, I mean, what's your vision about how Ripe can kind of differentiate in the market? So it's not just seen as essentially like table stakes, because people are becoming quite used to seeing this personalization.
No, but it's a really great question. I do think that AI is propelling, but it's also interesting when you think about, well, as soon as people in the US started having too many robocalls. What happens? Truecaller becomes a huge deal, and I'm sure there are a million competitors of them as well, right? So as soon as one of these channels gets fully automated and people start pumping content through it, the way email has been doing that for a while, but now you have really sort of decently personalized, nice emails coming your way as well. People turn off, I think, and I think it's the same with I don't know if this is true, but I have this theory that GDPR killed the chatbot, if you know what I mean, where it's like, okay, yeah, there's this little pop-up thing here, like get rid of it. Like our mind is trained. We're like snipers for that X, right? So I think that's where AI and sales are going to have a sort of tough time. Like everybody's so hopeful right now, and I think good on you if you're doing it right now. You have a good few months, maybe
riding the
years
wave,
ahead of you, exactly. But that's why we think ultimately there's sort of no real, what should we say, substitution so far for real human connection, and that's why a lot of people have sales team. Right, like that's the reason they hired a lot of these people to actually do their job. Are the future people or future companies going to have much leaner sales teams? Yes, probably not going to have a lot of these meltwaters flying around with. But I think ultimately the real answer to that question is Ripe is trying to connect two authentic human beings together, and the only way to do that scalably is to filter out everybody who you don't necessarily want to talk to,
right?
And only engage with the people that really matter, instead of like, let's just send an email to 5,000 people and see who responds. So it's more about sort of adopting that sniper methodology.
Super interesting. And you're nearly what 3 years in now? Around 2.5
3 years in the making. It's a big product, but it's been a lot of fun, and I think especially over the last year we've really seen what kind of results it can bring in for customers as well. So that has obviously been a huge, I think, infusion of energy also into the whole team of it's way more fun to solve people's real problems than do it in theory. So that's been very exciting over the last couple of months.
You start to really see the fruits of your labor. But in terms of the last 2.5 years, or even actually your experience before Ripe, can you share an incident from your career? What was the most kind of significant setback that you've encountered? Maybe your most challenging day ever at work, for example.
Yeah, there's so many, I was going to say, but there really is. I think one of the, sort of a non-answer, but I think one of the, getting fired over a video call that sucked, right?
Okay. Doesn't sound nice.
No, but that happened. But I also have this it's so funny how the mind works. I have this one memory of I was like working on a big strategy pitch for Meltwater at the time, and we were sort of like fundraising, and I had these two other guys who like just like they were like, why are you in, like, you know? So it's like one bad meeting, but that's like, so I guess I've been pretty lucky. But there's been a couple of those incidents, but I think, and maybe it's from sports or something, but I think for me, I don't think of this like setbacks or these things necessarily as very sort of like hard emotionally. I think it is hard when you like, you know, ruin something, just like building a Jenga tower, and then you're like, no, shit, you got, you know, those kind of experiences are always, they're hard in the moment, but you also, I think you have to develop sort of a pretty thick skin when you, especially in startups, right? Just like move on to the next one.
There's a hell of a lot that can fail, right? So you better get ready.
Exactly. And I think if it goes for anything that you're building, you know, it was scary first before you learned that, right? Where like I remember like, oh, the system is down or something. I was working at Meltwater, and like we deployed something to one of those products that I was working on, and everything was broken. But you know, the older people pick you up. They're like, yeah, it happens to everyone. You're
exactly. Right. Yeah, they've been there before. Exactly. Yeah. But shifting away slightly from the negative experiences, then what's your greatest success up to this point, would you say?
You know, I think finding, and I thank Elin for that a lot as well, but like finding the guts to quit this very comfortable, fun, you know, exciting workplace to be basically like, I wouldn't say depressed, but I was sort of like, it's tough being two people, you know. It's sort of like when you're sick, half of the workforce is gone. When you're not, when the other person's sick, you're alone. So I think I like having a team, and I like building things together with people. So for me, it was a big transition to only be. We were not two people for that long, but it was a solid 6 or 8 months or something. Maybe a little bit less actually, but still, it was that was it's not easy. Just like even though it's, you know, theoretically very easy, you know, especially when you live in this most like privileged country in the whole one of the most parts of the world, like
that,
you have a decent education, you know, you can get a job if you really need to, at least for another few years now, but like so the cost of failing is very low, and even then, right, it's tough to like just get out there and make no money for a while, and so I think that was the biggest success so far. And I think that's generally, you know, a good measuring scale is not measuring things so much on the outcome, because there's so many factors into it, but with like what you put into things. And so that's something that I'm proud and very happy that I did.
And you mentioned that kind of moment when you were leaving your previous role and kind of starting out with Ripe. You said earlier you spoke to kind of Johannes, and you said, I'm leaving because I'm starting something on my own. What was it? Do you remember the kind of pivotal moment when you decided, no, I'm doing this, I've got to go ahead with it?
I remember it clearly. I think sometimes you need options in order to make it feel like a decision, right? So there was a former boss that called me up and said like, hey, I got this perfect role, and I'm like, no. Right, it was a great offer, and really flattered and everything, but I just instinctively felt like, absolutely not. I'm not like, I've already done that, you know. I'm sure this would have been a step up or something, but for me, it was that was the moment I knew that I decided.
And at Ripe, how many people like do you have working at Ripe at the moment? How's the kind of team distributed? Are you in office? Are you kind of working remotely? Are you hybrid, or how does it?
We try to be. I think we love being in the office like that. I think especially when you're a small group, you know, you get a lot out of it. Otherwise, you might be, you know, if people are like already on 3 different continents, then like you're gonna have a Zoom room anyways. But
Right.
but I think that there's a social aspect of it that I think is important. But I think mostly it's about communication and making sure, sort of, especially when you're early, like we're about 10 people right now. You like you gotta have something that's yours, that you feel is yours. So for us, that's the office. That I think when I started working, it was sort of like you could work from home, but it was weird if you did it 3 days in a row, or even 2 days in a row. I think it's not the same world anymore. You need, people expect flexibility and stuff, but we just try to have that as the default.
Right. Makes sense. And you mentioned when it comes to potentially challenges when it comes to that kind of remote model, you spoke about communication. Anything else in your experience that you would find challenging if your whole company were to go to a more kind of remote model?
No, I think generally the media, not that it's hard to start things up, and I don't mean like companies. I mean a project or a feature. Like it for me, at least as a product manager as well. Working with designers, with my background is in that, working with a lot of people, it's harder to do it over a video phone, and I think it's harder over video call, and I think it's still the next best thing, right? It's like it works, and especially if you have very professional people who have used to doing it a lot, then it works great as well. So I don't think it's a terrible way to get work done, but it's not a great work, I think, for collaboration in general. Obviously, there's been, like, I don't even know how people did before FigJam and Miro and these things. Like, that was one of those COVID products. So that helps a lot again. So I not impossible, but I think I bet there's a more difficult.
No, I can understand that. But it's like you say, these tools that popped up during COVID or as a result of COVID, essentially making these things much easier in general. But I hear what you're saying. Moving on then, I'd like to hear a kind of a hot take from you, a kind of unique perspective. Can you share any kind of unconventional opinion that you might have on technology?
I think this is a really tough question. This was the one thing. I reading through the notes that you and I actually talked right before we recorded live. Quickly, I was like, "Are you too cool to be on LinkedIn? What's going on?" Like social media for me is one of those things that I don't like to do. I don't have that gene. A lot of my friends do. I'm addicted to other things in technology, but I do think that that's something that I think everybody's aware of, but it's still like there's a lot of these technologies now that we're adopting. Whether it's we're sort of getting fed with a shit ton of great content. There's these amazing games that you can play with your friend. Like all of the things you dreamt of as a kid are coming to fruition. One by one. With the AR headset, which everybody has thought of, but nobody has and I still haven't tried it, so I don't know. But I'm skeptical. But anyways, the main take I have is that it's just so addictive, right? The whole thing is
part of the problem, right? Yeah.
Right. It's like too good.
Yeah.
Right? And I think about that quite a bit, about sort of the drug-like properties of it. Like you get a little bit and you're like, this is amazing. You get a little bit more, and at some point you're like, I don't go to work anymore.
Yeah, give me the next kick. Yeah,
exactly. And I think the more we sort of do what makes you happy, but make sure it makes you happy, right? I think that's that's the thing that we need to realize, that all of these things that we replace things with, they have an opportunity cost. I think it's going to be like a socioeconomic thing in terms of how much do you read. I mean, I think it always has been, but it's going to get worse. If we've already hit peak there. There's a lot of these things that are detrimental to our life quality unless handled properly. And then I think it's up to whatever people think politically, whether that's the government or our personal responsibility. I don't know what the right answer is, but I think you just get. I think we don't really realize the cost that it has on what we do all the time. And I think that's something that I try to stay mindful of. Yeah.
No, I think it's a super interesting take. I think, personally as well. Or you're in a bit of a catch-22 because you know how important social media is in this day and age for your business and how the business is run and how it's kind of marketed and everything like that. But when it comes down to a kind of personal level, I'm also, like you were saying, quite acutely aware of these kind of, the negative effects or kind of consequences of these things or platforms or whatever you want to call it. But no, super interesting take.
Yeah, I mean, being a designer and with, imagine how good OpenAI is in a few years. I'm sure it's still fun. I'm not sure it's as fun, right? I don't know, maybe. We'll see.
No, true. But a round of rapid fire questions coming up.
All right.
What emerging technology do you believe will have the biggest impact on your industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit, but it has to be, but I think maybe not in the way people think. I think that it's going to really sort of reduce the amount of options that people have and force people to find new ways of doing things as opposed to being really good at the AI ways. I'm sure that will be part of it too. But it will. It's a boring answer, but it's true.
No, yeah, I think most people would I think the first thing that kind of springs to mind is AI or something AI related. But with your product, you're kind of probably utilizing that, but then moving it into that kind of that personal approach where it's kind of the same focus. I think people over time, they are going to miss that kind of social, personal kind of interaction with people. So, you're probably well onto something there in terms of what people are going to want.
Yeah, and I still think I don't know how much generative AI CIA uses, but I'm sure they use a lot of the old school AI that I grew up with when I went to San Francisco, and that stuff hasn't even trickled down to a fraction of what it can do either. So I think that's where maybe even the bigger opportunity is rather than generative as well.
Can you give an example of a product feature that you guys have built that was driven by data insights but didn't ultimately resonate with the users as you might have expected?
I mean, I think a lot of features are like that. You have accidental hits. I think one clear example is when I was working at Kry on Livy Connect. And there was the obvious things like you needed this and better video and yada yada yada. But the thing that really people came back for was this one certification that hey, this is fully encrypted and I think it was that was something that was obvious to do early on, but that was the main juice of the product. So we could build any other number of features with very little impact. The fact that it was secure and private. So I think that's been my main lesson as a product manager. Just realize what people are actually looking at, and then maybe it's cool that the video is 5% better, but is it gonna be materially make a difference? And I think that's where causality is difficult to work with, and people like to do maybe a bit too much with data there, I think.
And you spoke about user privacy and stuff like this. How do you balance kind of innovation with user privacy in your tech products?
Yeah,
it can't be easy.
It's not. I think it's a lot easier when you do B2B, to be honest. It's not that difficult. You get people to accept terms. We do it every day. So frankly, it's not that difficult to do in B2B. It was a lot more difficult at Kry with health data, sensitive data, that kind of stuff. So there it was absolutely pivotal. We couldn't launch things unless we knew they were secure. But it's always a balancing act. You got to take some risks every now and then you got to think about the worst case scenario. And I think in our case, that's generally not that bad. In Kry, that was a different calculus, right? That people had to do on a daily basis. So
yeah, very, very sensitive data they're handling.
Yeah.
Of course. Which tech product do you think is overrated or ridiculously overrated, and why?
ridiculously overrated.
Yeah.
That's a harsh statement. Yeah, no, but I think the Apple Watch is
Oh, yeah?
my go-to. I tried it. Like I had this habit, which I wish we could do if they would tear down the Max hamburger place. No, what is it? It's Fridays, and build an Apple store actually in the city limits.
Yeah.
But you can go to an Apple store, pick out anything, return it without a box within 2 weeks. So I did that every time they launched a new product in San Francisco. And I tried the Apple Watch a couple of times.
Yeah.
Not for me. I mean, I just like, no, I don't need that much analytics. Speaking about, the hot, not so hot take earlier, right? Like, why do I need this much data? Is this making me feel better? I'm not convinced.
Right.
Not sure what I use it for. It was cool to call people when you were like out on the water and shit. That was nice. But it's I think it's for me very overrated. Yeah.
I think it's also like, a lot of people, when they're not at the office or at home, I am at least, I'm often kind of out with I've got my phone, I've got my laptop, and you've got your Apple Watch on top of that. It's kind of, specific uses.
It's a lot of screens to get a message on.
Yeah, exactly.
3 of them at the same time. I have this idea that at some point I won't need the phone anymore. I guess the bank IDs here in Sweden is the one thing holding me back there. But that I could do that. I could replace one thing with another. So we'll see.
Yeah, but, keep it simple.
I don't need both. Yeah.
What about a love at first use experience with a tech gadget? What was it? What drew you to it?
I think but my first love was the iPod. Absolutely. Like I had I had 2 full families. My parents were never together, so like I had 25 people chip in for that sort of like big hard drive version originally. I love that thing. But I think also the Kindle. I love the simplicity of it. I use it so much.
I've used
it has that
quite recently.
retina display. You can read it. It works in the sun, on the beach, in the car.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's one I'd actually say is underrated.
That is heavily underrated. I mean, and I think we need better distribution. You can't buy a Swedish book on it, so I only basically read on English right now. But other than technology-wise, perfect.
No, that's a good point. I think that's going to kind of refresh a lot of people's memories. Actually, Kindle's not something you hear people talking a lot about nowadays.
No, I guess there's a Swedish version. I forget what it's called. It's like one of the, I want to say, I don't remember what it's called.
In your opinion, Jonatan, what's the most unnecessary feature you've seen on a popular tech product?
Unnecessary. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a hard one. I think the in hindsight, Touch Bar wasn't a great success. I tried, but no. I mean, I think generally the amount of analytics, whether it's from your watch, from your phone.
Yeah.
I don't need to know the oxygen level. Like, make it a specialist medical device or something. Like those things. I also tried one of those things. They don't even have a screen. It's just a bracelet. I forget what they're called. Like you buy it as a subscription service. It will come to me anyways. Like, you'd wake up and you're like, how have I slept?
Yeah.
You're like outsourcing talking to your body. Like for me, it's too much. Like I've been banging that drum now, but.
You realize how easy it can be that people kind of get obsessed or kind of stressed about these things as well, right?
Yeah,
the device is telling you.
I know, because that's what I did. It was like, it was sort of like, I can't go out and have a beer with a friend tonight because I'm going to fuck up my sleep. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Is that the life we want? I don't know. Maybe not.
No, good point. If you could code with any celebrity for a day, who would it be and why?
I tell you, listen, it's not Steven Wozniak. I went to one of his like seminars in San Francisco. I was like, this guy, you just press on, it goes for 6 hours. And but I'm sure he's brilliant, though, so maybe I should pick him. But no code. I mean, I think one person that would be like fun to do something with. Off the top of my head, man, you're putting me on the spot. I think this is a real boring answer, but like I think there's one guy that we used to have these hackathons with when I started out my career. Like he would just he could build anything. It was just one of those people that. And we actually have a couple of people that I got over from previous employers here as well. But I think the most fun people to work with are the people that actually are like, this. Yes, and then you just continue building with each other. So I think, I don't know a celebrity that I don't know them that well. I also don't know that many celebrities because I'm a boring person when it comes to those things. So yeah, maybe I don't know. Like, I'll pick my friend. Yeah.
Your friend would be super happy with you.
He's a real legend. Yeah.
But I see what you mean when you kind of feel that connection with someone that you're working with quite closely and you're building something together, and they just get it, and they're like, and they get the next thing and the next thing. It's kind of like
and I think it's such a collaborative kind of work thing. This, right? Like there's very few sort of. There's a couple, right? The solopreneurs love going at it alone and stuff, and I respect that. I think that's cool. But for me, I think that's where. Like just like with sports, I love team sports when I've done that. So I played a lot of American football as a kid, and everybody has a job. If we all do our jobs, then this thing is actually going to move that way. Like I think that's really that's the thrill for me. That's why I've stayed around in this career for as long as I have now, which is a while. Yeah, it's I think that's the stuff that makes it real fun.
Nice. And if you had an unlimited budget for a personal tech project, what would you build? It's okay if you say you'd continue to build Ripe.
I mean, I'd wrap up Ripe for sure. No, but but I think like I wish it wasn't space, but it probably is. Like I get it. I see those Jeff Bezos and all those billionaires like building rockets, and but I also think that's sort of the like as far away from Instagram as you can get in a way, right? Where it's like I'm sure Instagram does a lot of good as well, but it also does a lot of bad. Where for people's how they feel about themselves and life and stuff. So like. Bringing us and like all the cool stuff that can come out of discovering new things. I think that is really fascinating. And I think, if I was born in the 1800s, I would have probably tried to emigrate as well. Like what's over there? Like I think that curiosity is a real driving force for me. So I wish it wasn't space, but it absolutely is. I would build. I could do something small too, like some micro satellite. I don't know, unlimited amounts, you say. So I guess we're going to Mars. Yeah, I guess that's what it's the only thing I like about Elon Musk.
Colonizing Mars.
Yeah.
And if you could eliminate one common tech issue forever, what would it be?
Oh, that's a real good one. I think like when iMessages auto-populated two-factor authentication, that was a close second. I think number one was copying on my phone and pasting. Oh, I love that stuff. So I think it's something. What's the inverse of that? I guess I actually signed in today with the Google Passkey passwords. I think long overdue. Takes a lot of time. It's really annoying. But I mean, I think battery life is the other missing piece of our lives. in a lot of ways, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love those Nokias. They just last for hours and weeks, right?
Yeah, weeks, exactly.
Yeah.
Now it's well, for me at least, and I try not to be on my phone too much, but I'm giving it maybe 48, maybe 36 hours tops, and it needs a recharge. But obviously, there are people charging it every night, right?
If you have to do like 2 days from me, I think that's a stretch. It's probably as much as I get out of it as well. Yeah,
you're like on the last percent, or kind of.
Yeah, that's also a lot better. It used to be every night, right? Like the iPhone 3G and stuff. It was, Now batteries, there's something there, and maybe something for the environment too.
Yeah, I think that was going to be kind of a follow-on question here. Would is there anything that you would think of with like kind of a social or environmental impact that you're kind of interested in terms of project?
I got too excited by space now. I guess I'm doing. Yeah, I guess we're doing fusion first. Let's get unlimited energy, and then we can go to space. On my previous answer, but yes. Sorry, I got distracted by that. I was like, I'm going to space without fixing the climate. What a bad person.
It's one way to fix it for yourself, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry, what was it?
No, I think what next one's kind of the future. Much more kind of future looking. But where do you see the biggest technological shift happening in the next 5 years related to your domain?
Yeah, so I think it's always the same trends happening over and over again, if you ask me. So like when a few years ago, there was this concept of like, these different loops and growth loops and la-di-da-di-da. That's basically what people today call product-led sales and the things that we care about and work with every day at Ripe. So I think for every one of the sort of iterations, we get a little bit closer to something that works pretty much like the normal world, right? Where, like, for instance, me saying hi to a user because they're important and just came through my storefront, which is my website, right? We're replacing all of these sort of current human habits, but in the digital domain. So I think that's like one of the natural progressions in that is, going to keep being like, sort of running these skeleton crew companies where you don't need thousands and thousands of people anymore, right? You need you need that to do moderation on a social media network or like things that we have not figured out how to automate yet. But I think that's going to be sort of a big shift in how sales is done for software over the next couple of years. It's really sort of that combination of having a product that can stand on its own 2 legs, having sales to take care of these complex use cases that are getting, as it's not just that things are getting simpler at the bottom, things are also getting more complex up top.
Right.
Like it used to be that you're like, cool, here's a very advanced piece of software. Today, that's a simple piece of software, right? Not just because of the user interface, because the capabilities are expanding. So I think that's the shift, sort of like really much leaner organization will be propelled by this technology shift that we're in right now. And I think a lot of people need to like stay. Yeah, it's a field where it's happening a lot. So people need to stay up to date and figure out what their next 3 years are going to be like, and not bank on the fact that they're going to be the same as the previous 3.
No, yeah, I think internally here as well at Proxify, we're often like trying to like look beyond this year and kind of looking at these 3-year plans or whatever it might be, and that can be super hard. So I think it's a valid point to try and sometimes like lift your head, and try and see the a bit beyond.
And I think we all have a decent sort of gut feel about these things, but we're also very anxious about being wrong. and frankly, we're always, it's hard to predict the future, right? That's why if everybody could, then everybody would. So
exactly.
But I do think it's there's that's the big upside of this whole, to name a positive, put a positive spin on technology, there's just a terrific amount of, smart people out there communicating their ideas. It's a lot to learn. And I think, I'm always humbled by the amount of, every time you have this brilliant idea, somebody's like, oh, well, that's, it's not the same, but it's pretty damn similar, right? And then like, how can we find more of those? Like, that's a cool part about the internet that I really love. And
yeah, absolutely. That knowledge sharing, accessibility,
amazing.
and everything. Yeah, for sure. But staying on that kind of positive, riding this positive emotion, can you just tell us quickly, something that you're really, really excited about at Ripe that you hope to be releasing, if it's a feature or whatever it might be over the coming months?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the biggest thing that we really sort of have shifted since we started, like we started with video. That's where we started. Then we realized, like, okay, you have to do targeting, otherwise this video thing is useless. And then we combine those two. But I think ultimately where we sort of are starting to really form an opinion about how this should be, how this is done really, and that only comes from working with real customers. So the thing that we're most excited about right now is sort of taking some of these best recipes that we've seen working together with our product, and then sort of helping distribute those ideas to more people. So I think when it comes to how we think about the next couple of years, there's going to be automation, there's going to be AI and cool features and yada yada. But it's also about sort of how do you sort of enable your team and your the people that you work with to actually be at their best and get that sort of productivity boost where they're like, hey, this isn't that hard. I don't need to go into a BI dashboard and look up if this user has logged into the platform. But then sort of helping people apply those things. So I think that's more of the general theme, is like, how do we distribute this knowledge that we've now acquired, and how do we grow on it and get people to share these things with each other. So that's we're going to be launching a way for people to sort of collect and systemize their operation model, and so we can share that between our customers as well, and so they can start learning from each other. So I think that would be cool, since it's still so early, and yeah, people still need that a lot. So that we're very excited about that. Yeah,
fantastic. A question now about mentorship. I'm not sure if you've had a kind of a strict kind of mentor or anything in your professional life up to now, but whether it's a mentor or a close friend or anyone, what's been the most kind of valuable advice that you've been given?
There's so many, right? I think very few of us get to become very good at anything without somebody helping us get there. I really believe that, and I think the sort of the best advice, ironically, we touched on this a little bit, was actually, I remember this very clearly. I was in a conference room. It's like a scene out of Succession. I was like pulling my hair out. I was like frustrated. This roadmap says that. And my boss, who's a good 10 years older or something at the time, Jonas, amazing person. He's like, dude. He's like the surfer dude from Norway who speaks with an American Australian accent, but it's like, you gotta relax. You gotta relax. This is media monitoring. Like, this is not the White House. Like, relax.
Yeah.
And I didn't take it to heart so much that I stopped working on it. But I do think it's very important to have that sort of 2-track system where you are like, okay, yeah, it sucks to lose a game or ruin a feature or blow up a deal, or all the shit sucks. But you also got to stay sane. Like, you get to do it all over again tomorrow, hopefully. Worst case scenario, you get fired and then you get rehired and you get to learn from it, right? So I think it's really important to maintain that balance over things that are catastrophic for real and things that feel like they're catastrophic. But there's probably like a way around it, and you'll figure it out. Or if not, you get to try again. And I think understanding which two of being good at identifying those is a really core skill for anyone, but particularly if you're starting your own business or it's too easy to, if everything is super serious, real, and definitive. Very, very, very tough job, right? Unless you're very lucky.
No, yeah, I think
which not a lot of people
you put
are.
it well earlier as well. It might suck at the time or in the moment, but when you put it into perspective, it's kind of like, okay, pick yourself up again and go again. No, very, 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 very good point.
Yeah. Nice. Did you have a mentor?
I haven't had a specific mentor, but I think I'd be quite mine's quite clear in my co-founder Victor, the CEO of Proxify. He's been, I think I have him to thank for a lot. Probably wouldn't be where I am today without him and his advice. And he himself, I know he's had different mentors that he's been able to kind of bounce ideas or kind of seek advice from, for sure.
Yeah, no, but it's tough to build stuff from scratch, right?
It's super tough, and if you have that kind of person that of course, I think it's good that you don't always agree on everything, but you kind of how they're reasoning, or like their think or reason behind why they're suggesting things, or kind of whatever it might be. If you know that you can kind of trust them, even if you don't 100% agree with what they're saying every single time, I think that's more the most important thing for me personally, is that kind of trust and that kind of back and forth relationship that you have with someone. I think when it comes to mentorship, of course, typically these are much older people who have been there and done that, have worn the t-shirt. But I haven't had that specific person yet, at least.
No, same for me. Only sort of like direct lines at work. I mean, I think then you always get advice from other people, but like, who has the time to give them all the context, right? I think that's maybe where,
exactly. And it's like you said, it's nice if you're kind of there in the moment, you're kind of moving fast, you're breaking things, and you're learning along the way. I think that's one way we've been able to build what we've built up to this point.
Yeah, no, but it's great also. I think, I think back on a lot of my colleagues that, I'm still in touch with, and that's also a huge wealth. I think sort of collectively, bringing problems back to each other. This is interesting. Let me get your take on that. And then you already have a lot of context, so you can get there pretty quickly. That's cool too. Yeah.
Super, Jonathan. Anything you want to add before I wrap up?
No, but just pleasure to be on here, and good luck with the series. It was a pleasure to be here. Yeah,
a pleasure having you here. And so that wraps up this enlightening conversation with Jonathan Dykert. Thanks again for joining us, Jonathan, and for sharing your experience. And to our viewers and listeners, we hope this episode sparked new ideas, offered comfort in shared struggles, and ignited a passion for innovation in your own professional endeavors. Until next time, keep building, keep pushing those boundaries, stay curious, and continue joining us on this journey as we enter the minds of those shaping the future of technology. Until next time, this is Lee Haynes signing off from Builders.